In ecology, there are many types of species interactions. I'll go over the main types, some of their classifications, and provide examples to help conceptualize each type of interaction. We'll begin with mutualism, a positive-positive interaction where both organisms benefit. Although it's important to note these interactions are not altruism, they aren't helping each other to be nice. Both partners are working towards maximizing their own fitness. The currency of mutualisms include food or nutrition, protection, and transportation. Many of these mutualistic relationships are the product of centuries of coevolution. A notable example of this is mycorrhizae, a symbiotic relationship between fungi and plant roots. This is thought to have aided in the evolutionary land invasion of plants. This type of interaction can be either obligate or facultative. Obligate mutualisms indicate a necessary association. Either species could not live or reproduce without the other. An example of this is corals and their zooxanthellae symbionts. The zooxanthellae live within the coral and allow the coral to photosynthesize and make its own food. In contrast, the relationship in facultative mutualism is much more flexible, although the organisms may still rely on one another, but only when conditions are favorable. An example of this is honeybees and flowers. They can exist and thrive separately. Bees visit many species of flowers, and many pollinators may visit plants, so they are not strict obligates. Next, we will move on to the exploitative, positive, negative relationships of predation, herbivory, and parasitism. In all of these interactions, one party benefits and the other is harmed. With predation, a predator kills and eats another organism, called the prey. Predators can either be generalists, eat whatever is available, or specialists, only eating a certain prey species. There are also many different predator foraging strategies, including sit and wait, sit and pursue, ambush hunters, active hunters, even cooperative hunting like wolves. With herbivory, herbivores eat the tissue or internal fluids of living plants. There are many types of herbivores, including seed predators, which are attracted to and eat the plant seeds that are high in fat, plant parasites, which will tap into a plant's phloem vessels and suck out sap, browsers that eat foliage from woody shrubs or trees, and grazers who eat herbaceous plants. Predators and their prey, whether it be a plant or animal, are locked in an evolutionary arms race. Prey adapt to avoid predation, and predators evolve to overcome those defenses. Some animal adaptations include mimicry, whether it be Mullerian or Batesian. Species evolve to resemble species that predators have learned to avoid. There are also many behavioral adaptations animals have evolved, like foraging at certain times or not so in the open, keeping lookouts like meerkats, and cooperative defenses like herding buffalo. Some species have developed evasion techniques like being fast runners or weapons like spines or antlers. Chemical defenses like venom or odor are meant to deter and cause pain and discomfort to the predator. Plants have also evolved defenses against herbivory. Examples of this include masting, which is producing large amounts of seeds in certain years but little or none in other years. Predators will not be able to consume all of the seeds produced, and it's highly variable and unpredictable. Compensatory growth is an adaptation to being eaten. The removal of plant tissue stimulates new growth and may actually be beneficial for the plant. The main strategies are constitutive or induced. A constitutive defense is one that is there all of the time, like thorns. Induced defenses are turned on in response to herbivory damage, like secondary metabolites, which can be toxic or attract predators of the herbivore. An important concept to mention is the optimal defense theory. The evolution of defense is based on the cost, risk, and value to the plant. A delicate balance of these factors is needed. Defenses should be allocated according to them. The last of the exploitative interactions is parasitism. This involves one organism, the parasite, benefiting off of the host in some way, like a mosquito sucking blood or a blotfly laying its eggs into a host, which is harmed from this interaction. All known multicellular organisms have at least one parasite, with a very biodiverse range of organismal groups. There are a few ways to classify parasites, based on if the parasite needs a host to survive. Obligate parasites do need the host to survive, and facultative parasites don't. They can survive outside of the host, but will be parasitic opportunistically. Another way to classify is by where the parasite occurs in their host, either inside the body, endoparasites, or outside of the body, ectoparasites. Finally, by how big the parasite is. Microparasites usually reproduce and multiply in their host, and macroparasites don't. The 6 parasitic strategies include parasitoids, which kill the host, castrators, who hijack the reproductive systems of their host, directly transmitted parasites, whose effect usually depends on the intensity of the infection, trophically transmitted parasites, who have a complex life cycle and multiple hosts, vector transmitted parasites, who rely on a vector to get to their host, like ticks, fleas, or mosquitoes, and finally, micropredators, which are typically vectors for other disease. They attack multiple hosts, and they need their host to survive and complete part of their life cycle. Competition is a lose-lose situation. This interaction is when organisms are competing for resources that are limiting and depletable, things like food, water, space, and mates. This relationship hurts both parties and limits growth, survival, and reproduction, depending on what resource is being competed for. Interspecific competition refers to competition between two different species, while intraspecific competition is between two individuals of the same species. This interaction can be direct or indirect. Direct competition could be two animals fighting for a food source, while indirect competition could be a larger herbivore eating all the grass, leaving the smaller with none. Exploitative competition is when individuals interact and compete indirectly as they compete for common resources. Interference competition refers to when one organism physically restricts another's access to resources. An example would be a silverback gorilla fighting other males that come into his territory looking for mates. The last type of interactions I'll talk about is where one organism is not affected at all by the interaction. It neither benefits nor is harmed. The first is commensalism. One species benefits and the other is unaffected. An example of this would be Forzy, or hitching a ride. Barnacles attach themselves to other organisms, like whales, and benefit from the permanent housing. Amensalism is the opposite. One organism is harmed while the other is not affected. Imagine walking along the sidewalk and stepping on an ant. You probably didn't even notice, but now the ant is very dead. Definitely harmed.